Welcome to Amplifying Leadership, a podcast where we talk leadership and all that goes with it, with our guests, our wins, and our challenges. My name is Tara Lehman, and I am a partner, coach, and consultant at Twin Life Coaching and Business Services, of which Amplifying Leadership is a division. For our leadership clients, we love to support you through these podcasts, tools, coaching, community, and more as part of our leadership services. To learn more about our Amplifying Leadership division and our leadership community, please visit us at amplifyingleadership.ca. Today, I am welcoming Stephen Howard, an award-winning author of 22 leadership, business, and professional development books. Welcome to the show.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Tara.
That's a great accomplishment. Congratulations.
Well, thank you. Appreciate it.
Why don't we get started today with you telling us a little bit about your leadership journey?
You know, I was thinking about that before the podcast, and I realized my actual first leadership position, I was 17 years old.
Yeah, nice and young.
The gentleman who ran the Little League organization in the little town I grew up, town you might have heard of, called Las Vegas. They came to me and said, "We're tired of adults umpiring the baseball games. Would you put together a group of former players and teach them how to umpire and run the season for us?" And so I did. Wow. I did that. That's partly how I put myself through college. So we 16, 17, 18-year-olds would be umpiring the games for the under 12s and the 12 to 14-year-olds. So it was quite fun.
That sounds great. I mean, just letting students, teenagers do that, number one, certainly helps them with understanding mentorship and leadership, right? It
did. I mean, and I leveraged them whenever I had an issue. We talked to them. I mean, these are all, I didn't even know what the word entrepreneur meant at the time, but Most of these gentlemen on the board of the Little League were entrepreneurs running their own businesses. And so I would go to them and say, "Hey, I got this problem." They'd say, "Well, let's talk about it." So they were great mentors to me, and I appreciate them many years later. That's great. So how did you come to writing 22 books? Well, my father was a fiction author. He wrote 20 novels, so I had to write more than him. So, number one, bit of a challenge. He also wrote a couple hundred short stories. He was a mystery writer, Ellery Queen Mystery Magazine, Alfred Hitchcock Mystery Magazine, and so he was. We always had books around the house. And anyway, when I was living in Singapore, I had left the corporate world, was starting my own consultancies, and a publisher from the UK came to me and said, we were talking to somebody, and she said, she thinks you could write a book about corporate branding. And I said, "Well, yeah, it's a passion of mine." So we talked about it. And so my very first book was published by Butterworth Heinemann in the UK, which is a traditional publisher. They also had a big college press. And interesting, I go on the internet occasionally, and my book is in various universities around the world still. So that's kind of a neat thing. Yeah. And I just kept writing after that. That's awesome. If we look at leadership today, what do you think maybe some of those critical challenges or problems that some of our leaders are having in our world today? I think the most critical problem, and that's a great question, but the most critical problem is that too many leaders have a pre-pandemic mentality about their role is to manage people. And I think coming out of the pandemic, one of the things that's really changed is people don't want to be managed. No one wakes up in the morning and says, I can't wait to be managed by my boss today. And certainly no one says, I can't wait to be micromanaged by my boss. So part of the philosophy of my latest book is that you manage things, you manage processes, you manage policies, you manage procedures, you manage projects, but you lead people. And if you can change your mindset that you're there to lead people, to develop people, not manage them, you'll go a lot further as a leader in this post-pandemic world. I love that you bring that up, because our world changed and we have to grow with it as leaders. And we really need to ensure that we are doing things differently, because it's a new normal. As everybody keeps saying, it is not the old normal. We need to let that go. So it's really nice that you brought that up. And I even say it's a new abnormal. I'm not sure we've settled into like normal yet. I quite honestly, I think we may be starting to a little bit, but we'll see what happens over the next 18 months or so.
I might steal that phrase from you. I love it.
You can. It's in the book, so you have to quote it.
Okay, I can quote it. Awesome. Well, why don't we talk about, you wanted to discuss today Humony Leadership. So why don't you first off explain to our audience what Humony Leadership is?
Humany is a word I created, Humony. It's not in the dictionary yet. But I combine humanity, and harmony. And I was thinking one night about how leadership had changed. And I was also just thinking about the world during the pandemic and realized that coming out of it, we all need more harmony in our lives, both our professional lives and our personal lives. And I started talking to people and say, hey, what does harmony feel like in your workplace? And people laughed at me. They scoffed and said, there's no such thing as harmony. And so I said, well, maybe there should be. So that's where the concept came from. I created Humany to help leaders focus on the fact that they're leading human beings. They're not leading assets. They're not leading resources. Again, it's a mindset changes. They're not managing people counts or head counts. They're managing human beings. And they're also managing human beings who, again, maybe one of the silver linings of the pandemic is we realize now that people have responsibilities outside the workplace. We used to say, work-life balance. Yeah, we know you have a life outside work, but as long as you get your work done first, go ahead and have that life. And we almost treated it as like it was secondary, like it was raising kids was a hobby. Being on your PTA was a hobby. No, these are the responsibilities that people have. And so leaders have to understand that and help people fulfill those outside work responsibilities as well as their work responsibilities.
And I think when leaders do that and when organizations recognize that, we get so much more productivity out of our people.
We do. And one of the reasons, Tara, is that, if I work for you and I come to my workplace and I'm thinking about, oh my gosh, I didn't have time last night to do this. I didn't fulfill this responsibility, or today I gotta go take care of my elderly parents, and I gotta make sure, how am I going to get out of work now? My brain is all on that stuff. So how can I be productive or more productive in the workplace? So if I work for you and you say, hey, we understand you need to leave at 4:30 in the afternoon, go ahead, do it. If you want to get that report done at 7:00 at night, that's fine. That's your choice. So we understand you have a responsibility. Man, I'd be more productive working for you, and I can fulfill those outside work responsibilities.
And I think too, with the pandemic, you're right. Like, so much has changed. And I mean, a lot of loss happened as well, let's be honest. But so people have different responsibilities perhaps than they did before. Maybe they don't have people to care for their elderly parents or their children or whatever may have happened. And I think it's really important that businesses recognize this through their processes and through their procedures to allow for that. Like you said, does the report need done by noon, or can it actually wait until tomorrow morning at 8 so that they can do it at some time that works, right?
Yeah, I mean, how many times do you turn a report into your boss at noon and find out they don't read it for a day and a half?
Or a week, who knows?
Or a week. Right. Yeah, and here's the contrast. I mean, I've been in the workplace many years. I remember my first job in Dallas. I went to my boss. I was 20 years old at the time, I think. And I said, hey, I need to take a couple hours off on Thursday morning. I have a dental appointment. And my boss looked at me and says, what's wrong? Your dentist doesn't work on Saturday? I was like, I had a toothache. It hurt. I didn't want to wait till Saturday. I need to see a dentist now. But that was the attitude that, anything that was personal, you couldn't do during so-called work time. And that has changed dramatically for the better.
Do you feel that those companies that aren't making those changes are going to start to fall behind because of like the hiring? People want more of this, more flexibility, for example, for dentist appointments and stuff like that. Do you think traditional companies?
I think they're already falling behind. I think they're already falling behind. And we see so many instances of, people joining a company and then finding out there's not the flexibility, and they quit after 2 months or 3 months. They're saying, this is not for me. This doesn't suit my life. And I think other people have also, people reevaluated what is the role of work in their life. And a lot of people have said, you know what? I don't need to commute an hour a day or 75 minutes a day each way to make a living. I can reduce my footprint. I don't need to have the latest, greatest mobile phone, for instance. My phone's 2 years old. I don't have to have the new one. I can reduce my expenses. I can reduce my income and have a much higher quality of life without having to work for bully bosses, without having to commute a lot, without having to go into the office and worry about, does that person come in? They're sick, they're sneezing, they're coughing. Is that the flu, or they have the latest version of COVID? Oh my gosh. Are we going to go through this again?
Exactly. So coming back to the Humony Leadership, and we've talked a lot about harmony and just process pieces. If we put all that together, what are some tips that you could give leaders who maybe need to move forward now? Maybe they're still kind of stuck, but they need to move forward to create some more of that balance, to create some more of that harmony, to retain those employees. Any tips for those people?
Yeah, two. One, the mindset change of that you're leading people, you're leading human beings. So think about that. Think about the implications, simple things. You send somebody an email or a text message at 9:00 at night. And yes, you may say, I don't expect you to respond to this, but look, that person's with their significant other at 9:00 at night. They're enjoying some quality time together and they look at their phone. What's the other person thinking? What is that doing to the relationship with the other person? Now says, wait, I'm not important. Why are you look? Even if you don't answer it, you're going to look at that text message or that email if it comes on your mobile device. I think the second thing that's really most important is having a bit of humbleness and vulnerability as a leader. No leader today can have all the answers. It's okay to say to people, look, I don't know what the answer is. But I do believe that we as a team can figure it out. So let's get together. Let's talk about this. What are your ideas? What do you think? What are the possibilities here? So a little bit of vulnerability and humbleness actually, research shows, actually builds trust. And there's a great void of trust globally in the workplace. And again, that's research based. So combining those two things, you can increase trust and you can increase collaboration, reduce drama, and get better ideas.
And I think too, I want to touch back to your email comment of somebody, a manager, leader, emailing someone at 9:00 at night. And of course, I hear the dang, and the first thing we all do, right? We look at our phones. But if you're truly leading by example, are you sending an email at 9:00 at night? Because your employees need to know that it's okay not to respond at 9:00 tonight, but they might just feel they have to because, well, the boss is working, so I must have to work. I should reply. What are your thoughts on that?
That's part of it. But the other part of it is I might think, oh my gosh, if I don't respond, will Tara respond? Will Susan respond? Yeah. What's this going to be for my career if I decide not to respond to tomorrow morning?
Yeah, exactly. So I think leading by example maybe would also fit into that Humony Leadership as well, based on what you're saying.
It would. Yeah. And every email software out there, you can queue messages up to send the next morning. You don't have to press the send button. You can say, please send at 7 a.m. tomorrow, 7:30 a.m. tomorrow, whatever you want to do.
Love it. So let me ask you this then, because we're talking a little bit about communication with regards to emails, etc. Do you feel that communication is different when we talk about your Humony Leadership compared to others?
I do, because I think one of the things is that people who rely less on email. I mean, pick up the phone, talk to somebody. I was coaching somebody yesterday, actually, and she said, one of my staff sent an email to a client, and the client responded in a negative way. They said, I don't appreciate her tone. I go, well, you don't know the tone of your email, the person's email. You're interpreting it in your own mind. And so we talked about how to handle that situation. And email is one of the worst methods of communications. It's efficient in terms of speed, but it can certainly be misinterpreted. And when we went through it, that email, if I read that email, I would have not had thought it was unkind or unpleasant as the client had said. I think the client was having a bad day and therefore interpreted in her own mind that this was kind and maybe a little bit on the rude side. But that's the problem. Pick up the phone, talk to people.
Yeah. In one of my trainings that I do on communication, I talk about there's 4 different types of communication, and when one is missing, it can be perceived and interpreted different by many different people. So you could say, everybody, I'm not in tomorrow, and someone, automatically thinks, oh, Tara must be sick. And the next person perceives it as Tara's really angry at us, or the leader is just being lazy today. because of one sentence, because we only have words. We have no voice to hear the intonation. We have no face to see a smile or not, right? And so when there's pieces of communication missing, especially as you mentioned with email, we can all perceive it differently.
Yeah, one thing, I do a lot of work in Latin America now, and I was not aware of this app called WhatsApp, but everyone in Latin America, so people in Latin America don't send text messages to each other. They sometimes don't email, but they send voice messages all the time. And that's beautiful because now you can hear the tonality in their voice, whether they're saying something sarcastic, if they're angry, if they're happy, and it leaves less room to misinterpretation. So it just amazes me that throughout Latin America, everyone just, and they don't talk to each other. They don't pick up the phone and talk to each other. It's like I'll send you a voice message. 5 minutes later, you'll reply with your voice message. I might reply in 2 minutes. So, but that becomes a conversation.
Yeah.
With some gaps in it, but a conversation much better than emails or text messages.
Yeah. I 100% agree. I mean, words are always up to interpretation. And I use WhatsApp to speak to some people over in the UK. And it's a great little app. I'm not advocating or anything for it. I don't get paid for saying anything about it, but it is a really good app because you can do it you can do video as well. So finding things like that can be certainly better than an email, as you're alluding to, because you can still do it across the oceans, with even the verbal, because when we can hear our tones and how we're speaking, it can come across very, very differently. So I think it's so important that this is a key piece because it does bring more harmony, more humany leadership, as you like to call it, to our workplaces, because we're now not interpreting it necessarily the wrong way. Yes, interpretations can happen even with voice, but not nearly as bad.
Not nearly as bad. I think the other change in communication too, I know a lot of the leaders I coach, is I keep telling them, you have 2 ears and 1 mouth. Listen twice as much as you talk. When we talk about, people think about leadership communication, they think about how they deliver their message. But no, it's about how you hear, how the other person receives your message, listening, asking good questions so you can find out, did they understand the message the way you intended it, or is there some hesitation there? And there's a big difference between someone asking a question for clarification reasons and somebody asking a question for pushback reasons. And too many leaders, they think they categorize almost all questions as pushback, and it's not. And again, it goes to tonality. If I ask the question, why are we doing this? That could be a pushback. But if I say, hey, why are we doing this? That means I want to know more. I want to know the background behind. So same words, different tonality.
And it causes more I'm thinking curiosity in the second way, right? Rather than it being more of a demand. Yeah. And I love that quote too. It's by a philosopher. I think it's, is it Epictetus, I think is his name. I can never pronounce it correctly, but that is a great quote. The 2 ears, 1 mouth. I love it. I use it in my training too. I think it's a fantastic quote. So why don't you help our leaders by giving them a few insider tips so that they could begin to lead more effectively in creating more, places that are great to work and that maybe we haven't touched on?
Okay, well, collaboration. I think in today's workplace, we all need more collaboration, creating an environment of collaboration, an environment of harmony. And that starts with, and again, research. Google did research a couple of years ago that came out that said the number one factor for team efficiency and productivity and innovation was a psychologically safe team environment. And that didn't mean things like no yelling and that sort of stuff. It really meant that people felt comfortable expressing their ideas, that they wouldn't be shot down. I've seen so many meetings that people say, oh, we tried that 10 years ago. That didn't work then. Well, the world's a bit different. Or they'll say things like, yeah, you think that because you went to XYZ university, all this little cutting type stuff that goes on in the workplace. And so people shut up, people pull back, particularly the more introverted tendencies in the workplace. They will, I give an idea and you shut it down, I'll just sit in the room and participate in the meeting by listening. So this psychologically safe environment, allowing everyone, one, it makes sure everyone participates as a leader. Secondly, of making sure that nobody shuts other people's ideas down like that. Listen, that's what brainstorming is all about. That's what innovation is all about. So collaboration is going to be key. The second thing I would say is resiliency. And I think as a leader, you need to demonstrate resiliency. In the book, I write that resilient people create resilient companies. And we're going to go through continuous cycles of change, and companies need to be resilient. If the people inside are resilient, if the people on your team are resilient, and just show that, hey, this too shall pass. We can get past this. Look, we didn't anticipate this. This is a disaster. It could be a natural disaster. It could be an economic disaster. It could be anything, a social disaster, like, or even like today. I know this broadcast will come out many months from now, but as we're recording right now, there are strikes in Detroit, the auto workers. That's having a big impact on Detroit. If you didn't anticipate that, that's impacting your business. Okay. How are we going to get past that? What are we going to do? The strike will end someday. How are we going to position ourselves when the strike ends? So that's resiliency and collaboration are two areas that are not taught. They are skills. You can learn them. And I think that's where leaders need to focus some of their own personal development as they go forward.
Yes, I agree. Resiliency is one too, especially as we've all gone through severe changes over the last few years, COVID being obviously the biggest one with shutdowns and all that other stuff. Resiliency needs to be in there. We need to figure out ways we can overcome things like port strikes, things like that as well, and how we can move forward with all the change that happens. And you're right, change is going to come on forever. It never ends, right? There's always something else. So being a resilient leader, I think it's a very key point.
That's why I call it the new abnormal.
Yeah. And I love that you've got a few books on this. We can start creating those manuals that we all need as leaders to get through all of these crazy times and these ever changing. I mean, the word VUCA was created, the volatile uncertain world was created so long ago, really, in retrospect, but it's still very, very true today. And change is never ending.
Absolutely. And part of that, the third thing that leaders really need to do is have that growth mindset, that continuous learning mindset. I've trained, mentored over 11,000 people over the years, and every month I still read 30 or 40 articles on leadership. Every year I read 6 or 7 books on leadership. I mean, even if it just reinforces something that I learned years ago, it may be something I don't remember all the time. So that continuous learning mindset, again, is a good example as a leader, but is also very important for leaders today.
I 100% agree, because sometimes you do need reminded, as you said, about, what is active listening or other things around that. And at other times you learn something new, even if you reread a book on leadership. Yeah. I'm an avid reader myself. And sometimes you reread a book and you're like, I didn't even catch that last time. So there's always something to learn. And growth mindset, you're right, is key to even helping your employees with a growth mindset and to grow the business. So any final thoughts or key takeaway for our audience today?
I think the key takeaway is what we just talked about. One phrase I love to say to people is never stop learning, because life never stops teaching. So
that's true. I like it.
If you just have one takeaway, do that. Keep learning. Yeah. But I think becoming people-centric as a leader, the focus on results is burning out people. It's burning out leaders. Yeah. Results are important. I'm not discounting that, but you're in a big organization. Does it matter whether you hit this month's quota or it slips into next month? It doesn't affect the share price. It doesn't affect I'm not saying goals are not important, but at the expense of what is happening to your people, burning your people out, the medical costs of that. Be people focused, become people centric, and you will have sustainable results. And the other thing is, people will stay. You'll stop the great resignation. You'll stop people coming and going if you'll focus on your people first, and then they'll give you the sustainable results that you want. But if you're only focusing on results, deadline, people are going to go. They have more important things to do with their lives.
That is a great key takeaway, and one that I preach as well. So if anybody wanted to learn more about you or your books, is there a way that they can find you online?
Yeah, thanks for that. Yeah, I'm on LinkedIn, Stephen Howard. It'll say Greater Los Angeles area. There's lots of Stephen Howards out there. My books are all on Amazon. The website, if you're interested in learning more about Humony, there is a website, humanyleadership.com. So it's Humony, HUMONY.com. And you can email me, Stephen at humanyleadership.com. I'm happy to, I will always spend 15, 20 minutes with somebody, or if you can find 30 minutes on my calendar, I'll do 30 minutes to talk about it. I mean, I'm happy to, talk to people about some of the concepts behind this, no charge sort of thing. But, my calendar gets pretty full. So 15, 20-minute conversations often work better than 45 minutes to an hour.
Awesome. And thank you for that. And thank you for a very enlightening conversation today. It was greatly appreciated.
It's been fun. It's been a great conversation. Yeah. I love it when these are conversations rather than Q&A.
Yes.
Like you hit the ball. You hit the ball with a question. I hit a ball back with an answer. But I love the conversation nature of this. So congratulations on a great podcast.
Thank you very much. A thank you to our listeners as well. We do hope you are taking away some key points to help you grow in your leadership path. If you are new to leadership or a seasoned leader who knows that support and developing your skills are the way to move forward on your leadership journey, or want to join our leadership community, please visit us at amplifyingleadership.ca, a twin life coaching and business services division. Until next time, please be safe and be an amazing leader or leader to be.